Hello to our wonderful guest of the evening. How are you, Your Grace?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Perfect. I'm going to say just a few words to our viewers that are watching. By all means, feel free to ask questions. We will try to answer the questions if the time allows. Um, Please try to keep them on topic. And I think that's basically all I have to say to everybody. So ask questions, do it in the live comment box on Facebook. Keep it relevant. We'll try to get to it. If we don't, it's not personal. We just ran out of time. And with that being said, Your Grace, I'm handing this off to you.
Thank you, Vesper. So tonight I'm going to discuss offside combinations. And a lot of people probably think, well, offside combinations, you swing a blow here, you swing a blow there, whatever. This is a little bit different. I'll just show the technique just to begin, and then we can discuss it. So you see a lot of things here like this, and somebody leans over like this, or hits here, comes over here, and comes back. The single hip hits here, comes around like that. And then it comes back the same way. So that's what we're going to talk about. But I'd like to reinforce what I said about stance last time. And before even that, I want to talk a little bit about the sword in power applications, because I've seen questions online that I'll answer here. One's the balance point of the sword. A lot of people say they like the balance point right in front of the hand here because it's easier to move. Well, that's true. It also lightens up the hit because the weight being swung around that is down here somewhere instead of way up there. So if you got a wide circle and all of a sudden it comes in tight, everything goes harder. The other one, weight versus speed. Do you want a real light sword or do you want a real heavy sword? Well, it's sort of you got to get somewhere in the middle there. I once spoke with a physicist, and we discussed this precise thing. He was in the society, didn't fight himself, but he knew what we were doing. And I was telling it, my observations is that the weight of the sword has a pretty strong effect on how hard things hit. Even though the equation of force E equal mc squared, you think that the c, which is the speed, doubled. That's the wrong, Fm, mass times acceleration, force equal ma, sorry. So you'd think the acceleration would have a greater effect because it's squared, feet per second. And it turns out it isn't. And it does have a great effect, but so does the weight. And he said he thought that what was going on is the speeds at which we're actually working, it does have more of an effect. If you get way up into the higher speeds, then the speed takes over. But given that, that's it. Okay, so a little bit about stance. One of the big things is to avoid getting a tell just by your stance. So you see some people who start fighting bent down like this, which pretty much means they have to move before they do anything. And you know pretty much where they're going to move. They're going to either go up or straight at you. This gives you can just watch to see when that's going to happen. As soon as you see something move, you can react. Leaning is another one. One of the reasons that the sword foot forward stance was introduced was that people would like to get just at the very edge of range. So maybe just a little bit out of range here. And so if they put the left foot, or sword foot forward, they could reach out when they swung and actually hit. The trouble with that is a lot of them do this, really slowly lean forward, and that's a tell. It's not that easy to pick up, but it is a tell, and people can see it and they will react to it if they can read it. A limited stance. So there's a couple things for that. One of the problems with a limited stance is predictability. So you have somebody here who's got the sword back in a point stance here. You pretty much know where that sword's going to go, because to actually swing it, you would have to get all the way back here or something like this. So it's pretty much going to come out straight. It might go in to do something else, but you know it's coming out straight. Or requires a motion before something can be done. Let's say this stance here. Shield there, like this. Now, if you can get in range enough so that you can just flick it out there, that's one thing. But if you actually want to make a real swing, you have to back it up and swing. So as soon as your sword goes back, it warns your opponent of the attack. And we'll talk about the slide step again later, which I covered last week, where you can actually slide in right in the middle of your initial blow, so you can attack from out of range. And what you have to do attacks without tells is you have to somehow get in a stance where you can do something, advance, walk forward, or swing without any preparatory motion. So using my stance, which is very upright, with the knees just bent just a little bit, and the sword back here in a cocked position, the first thing that moves is the sword. Okay, so now they know you're swinging, but you're out of range anyway. But then all of a sudden you're coming into range, and this introduces an element of surprise. And are they going to be all the way in? Are they not? A little indecision there. As soon as you make your opponent start thinking, then they're going to have a problem, because it slows them down. And I swing the sword, and halfway through the thing, I do that slide step, and the distance changes. And this introduces an element of surprise. I'm out of range, and I'm swung. And that introduces a little curiosity there. And then the sword starts coming in farther than you think it could come from that stance, because I'm sliding in. And since I started the sword moving first, your opponent's attention is on the sword, as it should be. And they likely will miss that sliding step, because you don't do any picking up your leg and setting it down. You just go forward and let the left leg catch up. I think that pretty much covers that. So let's talk about the single hip. Okay, so you have you just hit something. So this has come out and hit something. And what you want to do is you don't want to pull it back anyway like this to a cocked position, because going back to a cocked position like that costs you time. You pull the sword back, you stop it, or you slow it down considerably, and then you have to completely start over the power application. So instead of the single hip, as soon as you hit, your body does a little headbutt back. So like this, a little headbutt back that. At the same time, your arm does like a little sideways curl. Curling would be like this, little sideways curl. They have to happen almost at the same time, but the headbutt has to go first. But it's not headbutt, then pull things. It's almost simultaneously. You try to get the tip of your sword as far out as you can. What this is going to end up meaning is that your elbow is going to stay in pretty close to your ribs until the sword gets out to here, straight over here. At which time you're going to start pulling it in. You're going to pull it in as if you're going to hit yourself in the ear with it. But right here, the elbow lifts up. and the sword changes angles and goes over your head and forward. That's an important thing. And this is a really, if you don't do this correctly, you're opening yourself up for injuries. So if you let that sword go higher than your shoulder, especially leaning over your head to hit something, your shoulder's no longer, your body is no longer connected to your arm. So your arm and shoulder are doing all the work instead of your core. And when that happens, after a while, you're going to start having pains in your shoulder, and it's just going to get worse. I noticed even in me, when I got way late in my career where I was doing just mostly teaching, I wasn't really practicing. I wasn't really keeping my techniques really pure. And I started to do that a little bit. Didn't take much, a little bit. And then I have recurring tendonitis down the arm. But that didn't start until I was in my 60s. And it wasn't from what I'd done before that. It was what I did afterwards. So let's go look at the technique and whole and then break it apart a little bit more. So you've swung the snap there. Now, an important thing once you hit is to bring your sword back very quickly. You should never hit like this, see the bounce, the blade stops, and you pull it back. That's an incredible waste of time. You want to pretend, or maybe it will actually bounce off just a little bit. Use that not as a source of power, because it really isn't going to be, but as a timing mechanism. You hit, the sword goes into the return. There is no pause at all there. That way it saves you all the speed you can possibly save. And then as you come back here like this, you go through this position. My hip has come back, my hand has come back to about the hip, and the sword is directly out from it. Then as we continue it, so sword's going to come in like literally just like I'm going to punch myself in the ear. Watch the tip of the sword change when I start bringing my elbow up. And you notice my elbow is still lower than my shoulder. And then the sword goes forward to any target on that side. You don't want to lift your hand up here and raise it up so it'll be at the target. Like I'm here like this and I want to hit somebody that the head's up there above the lapel. So instead of raising my hand up so I can reach it, I change the angle of the return just a little bit. So instead of coming straight back, or even I can't come straight back, and right about here, I'll raise my hand up. When it gets out to here, you're not swinging it with your arm anymore because all the power has been put into the blade by what went on around here. So the physics of this is sort of interesting. You're swinging the sword out at a wide rotation, so you're applying power to this wide rotation, radius of rotation. The radius of rotation is the distance between my center of mass and the sword's balance point. So from here, then the radius of rotation is this distance here. If I pull it back in tight, a shorter one. But anyway, you want to try to get the maximum out here. Then as I start pulling it in, watch the radius get shorter and shorter and shorter. So there's a line going through me, straight vertical line that goes through that center of mass. So the distance between here and there is what it comes down to. By that time, the sword is going a lot faster because that F equal ma, you have to keep that equation balanced. And if the distance goes down, then you have to add more speed. It's like a skater who's spinning around in spin with their arms out. Okay, you're spinning a weight, which is your arms, and the distance between that center of rotation and the balance point of just the arm out there requires a certain amount of power to get that speed. But once they bring their arms in like this and the radius becomes essentially zero, things have to speed up because it still has to go but power is still the same, but you don't have that distance you can travel through. So it has to go through that shorter distance a lot faster. So we've done here, we've done our little sideways curl, pull it back with your core. It's literally just a little short thing. When I do it, you wouldn't even notice it because I'm so practiced. Just flexing, it moves me back about half an inch. That's all you need because the weight of your upper body just yanks it back. So you're coming here, okay, you're coming in like here now, and you've just increased the speed of the sword. Now, what happens when your sword goes out in front of you? Because you're increasing the radius now, at least it seems like you are. What you actually do for that is when it starts coming over your head, there's a big curve being described by the tip. And instead of moving your hand directly at the target, you move it off to the side a bit to maintain a pressure towards the center of the curve. So here like this, and then I'm pulling this way a little bit. And that actually keeps the sword moving. If you come over here like this and the sword gets here and then you try to push it forward, basically it slows down to about the speed of your hand moving forward, which is not very fast. But this curve here, where all the power is being generated, if you continue that pull inside towards the center, it maintains it right up to the end. So what is going on here is we're swinging a blow where instead of pushing forward and pushing the sword, swinging the sword basically, I'm putting all the energy into the backswing. And then it translates to a much faster speed and power going forward. So along with this nice little really quick motion, let me, I showed you the single hip slow. I'm going to do it fairly fast this time. So I'm out here like this. Demonstration. Okay, now along with all the power generation, we also have what I call the movement option. So when you swing your sword out this way, at this point, the sword is actually pulling that way. And you can't tell, but your body is actually leaning a bit the other way. So if right about when the sword is here, you just slowly you sort of take the weight off your foot, so it's a little lighter on that foot. You don't lift it. You just sort of lift it just barely. But when the sword goes past that point, it's no longer pulling that way. So what your body will do, since it's leaning this way, it'll move that way. But it won't happen until the sword's about here, because it takes your body a little bit of time to do things. So you pull it back here and then you step this way. So all of a sudden, whatever you're going to do with that forward motion of the blade, it's going to be coming in from over here instead of here. Likewise, when the sword gets around here, the sword is pulling that way, your body is leaning that way. So if you take the weight off your right foot, you move over here. Now the sword is coming at you from a foot to that side. And look at sideways where that change occurs. So I'm going to do the first one where I'm going to move towards the screen, swing back. So let me just see. So I'm here like this. Comes around here. Look where the sword is when I took that step. It doesn't give your opponent a whole lot of time to actually react to anything. And you can actually do little half steps. So you're coming over here like this. You take a little, you go this way, but you're only taking a half step, and then you can come back with a longer step this way. So basically, it's a feint this way and a pull that way. But all my feints are full speed, full power. So it doesn't slow you down, you just change the motion. Now to allow that change of motion to happen requires another technique that I teach, which I introduced last week, which I call the power wobble. So if I'm going to move sideways, instead of lifting up my foot and taking the step, I'm just going to start falling in that direction. Now at a certain point here, the heel is going to start coming off the ground, and you let it just snap the foot forward like a fencer's lunge. So what this means is all you have to lean just slightly, and you're actually falling in that direction, and then your foot catches you. Same way going the other way. It's almost impossible to detect because the first thing that happens is you actually move that way. There isn't any preliminary motion that you have to make. You just start moving that way, which makes it a little more difficult for your opponent to judge what the hell is going on here. One of the things you have to watch out for, though, is, and again, I talked about this last time, you have to have that foot outside of your knees, which have to be outside of your hips. Otherwise, your weight is going to come right straight over that foot, and the next time you push with that leg, you're going to be going up, which isn't terribly useful in this game. And you can use the same thing when you're actually swinging. As I showed you here and here, or I can go here, here, like that. It'll become very apparent how useful this is in some of the variations I'm going to show you later. Now, I want to talk just about, these are basically specific things that happen to occur. So you're actually walking forward and swinging at the same time. So if you're going to swing and go forward and you step out with your shield foot, your body is actually moving that way and will drag the sword that way and give it power. If you step with the back foot, it'll do the same thing, but it takes a whole lot more time to do that. And it actually takes some power out of your blade because your blade wants to spin around that center of rotation. If the center of rotation is going right along with it, there's no reduction in radius, and you don't get any extra added power from that sort of thing. So when but if you want to take a swing with stepping with your back foot, for instance, you're coming in on a great weapon and you need that extra range, the thing you have to do is you actually have to put the power into the blade before the foot moves. So it's like launching a rocket. You know, the fuel actually burns out after a certain point, and then it's coasting. We call that going ballistic. So the power gets applied here, and then it goes off, and then it essentially coasts. And that's what you do with this. You want to step with the back foot. So you put all the power in there when your back foot's still on the ground and pushing. And right after the sword passes you, then you can step along with it. There has to be a little perceptual delay there. Otherwise, you're moving the center of rotation right with the sword and it's going to slow down. Just like pushing over here. Let me give you a real graphic demonstration of that pushing on the other side not working well. Okay, so this is a full speed single hit. And this is two. Notice it didn't hit. All I did was push my hand out and it stopped. Okay, so that's if you're advancing and swinging. And with the power waddle, the stance and the power waddle working. As the stance I teach is not a squared stance. The stance is actually a little bit diagonal. And using the power waddle to go forward, you're not going to change your body position. You may wobble a little bit side to side, but you're not essentially changing it. Now, when you actually start swinging this thing, oh, I'm sorry, we'll go back to that a bit. So as you approach, you're still maintaining your stance here, so you have your shield and your sword in the ways where you want them to be, or you're swinging. Now, a nice thing about the single hip is, since all the power is on that little back jerk a little bit from the arm, as soon as you've done that, which is right at the beginning of the blow, you can step with either foot without disturbing the power. So if you're chasing somebody, you can actually swing, come back, swing, swing. And looking at it sideways, I'm going to exaggerate the lean, so you get it. And this is bad enough, but for you shorter people who can't take long steps and you're fighting somebody that's 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 inches taller than you are, this is makes it a lot easier to get in range, because they can't just stay out of your range and then pick apart a time when you stumble forward and they hit you on the head. They have to deal with you swinging at them. Now, the funny thing about that, both when you're advancing towards an opponent who's not moving and when you're actually chasing them, like you pull people all the time, instead of having your feet like this, your feet turn to the outside. Because the only reason keeping your feet in this is to maintain that sideways stance as you approach. Once you start chasing, you can still maintain the upper part. The lower part doesn't really matter. You just bounce back and forth between your feet. Now, if you want to move to one side or the other, you want to take a step to get to somewhere on one side or the other. Basically, the back foot leads. The only difference is that is if you take a real wide step with that front foot in the first part of the swing. But if you're stopped, you're just pounding away at each other. Let's say you're just in sword range and you're hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting, and you want to go a little further that way. You can do this here, but you can also do this. It gets you a very different angle. The back foot moves in back of this. Your weight is actually going sideways. And so the back foot will actually catch it right about the time you hit the target. And that gives you an opportunity. If you have timed it just right, you can take that what was the front leg. So you come over here like this. And if I'm fairly balanced, I can just come back in the single hit and I have a swing. If you want to really try to get around that a long way, you can actually retain a little bit of momentum in your body and you'll actually fall out of range just after you hit. If you're going to the shield side, you pretty much have to step with the back foot, because stepping with the front foot would mean you're actually turning yourself like this to your opponent, and that's not a good place to be. Now, I've seen some people that like to do this technique here. One of my people I'm teaching does it. So they're here like this, and they want to swing back and move back at the same time. So they bring this foot back, so they're standing put together like that, thinking that somehow this imparts a little more of a snap or something. Actually, it doesn't. It just stops the blade. All your power goes out the back end. So if you want to step in any direction, back included, and want to swing another blow, you actually have to have the foot when it lands far enough back so when you swing, you've still got a balanced stance. If you're doing it to the side, you swing like this and you see the weight get over my foot. You don't have another swing right now. You have to correct your posture. Same thing this way. So instead, you have to take steps that are outside of your knee and hip so that you have a platform that you can move further on. Same thing the other way. It's a little harder that way. And this has an interesting little result. You notice a lot of times that people are trying to go really fast and they throw one or two or three really fast blows and then they stop. The reason they stop is because they're no longer in a position to apply power to their swords. They're leaning too far back. Their bodies is out of place. They simply cannot apply power, so they have to just sort of bail out. That's why you see these real quick 1-2 attacks out of range, 1-2-3 and out of range. I do an exercise where I require my students to do at least a 3-blow combination, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. Except for certain exceptions where you want to fall out of range, you should be able to throw what I call an infinite combination with this technique. You just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And when you pair that up with the teardrops, which I'm going to cover in my next session, it gets pretty nasty because it's basically you have a technique in the slide step which allows you to get from out of range to in range without pretty much minimal danger, and then it never stops. The sword keeps coming again and again and again and again and again and again until something happens, or you get tired, or you hit your opponent, or they hit you, or whatever. Okay, I want to go to the slide step a little bit again. So last week I told the story about the pig and the chicken opening a restaurant, and they're discussing what kind of food to serve. And the chicken wants to serve breakfast, and the pig doesn't want to. And the chicken says, "Why not?" And the pig says, "Well, if we serve breakfast, you're involved, and I'm committed." Eggs versus the pig. So the only thing the first thing that you move when you're advancing at your opponent has to be the pig. Everything else, the chicken, is a tell. So if I'm up here like this, and the first thing you see moving is the sword, that's the pig. That's the only threat in that whole ball game. If I actually pick up my foot, I lean a little bit, anything of those movements, any of them, even if you think it's going to give you an advantage, it isn't. Yeah, you maybe be able to fool Squire so-and-so, or the newbie's been fighting a few weeks. You're not going to trick the upper level fighters. You're just not going to. They'll pick it up. But if you make them go to that sword, you make them respond to that sword, then you've got you just got a little step on them. And also that slide step, as you come in, so going very slowly, this swings about here, the step occurs. Yep, forgot where I was going. That's what happens when you get old. Okay, before that, you're out here. Now let me show you how far out I can actually launch an effective attack. So here's sword range. Here's shield. How's that look? And when I'm swinging the slide step, I can come into that range. So what your opponent thinks when he sees the pig start moving, thinks he's out of range. And then as you move forward, he says, maybe it's not going to be. Oh shit, it's going to hit me. It may not hit him. It may only be in range of the shield. but you can't tell very easily. You see some of these martial arts things where the guy swings at him, the other guy didn't move, and this stops a quarter inch from his nose. I don't think that's even possible. If he agrees he's not going to step forward past the punch, sure. But I mean, I do the striking art, did the striking arts too, and I could vary the depth of my punch quite a bit. And that's what makes it so hard to react to this thing. It's an element of surprise. Now, once you introduce that element of surprise, your opponent starts thinking. And once they start thinking, they're going to be slower. So you can slowly get ahead of the person. Let's say I'm going in and I'm going to throw a snap from out of range. So that surprise of coming into range actually gives me what I call half a count. I count a count. A count is the sword going from here to here or here to here. That surprise gives me almost a whole count. So I'll be about this far ahead of my opponent when they start paying attention to what I'm doing. And you can build up these counts with surprises. So I come over to here and I step forward again. You know, I'm a little closer at a different angle, and that introduces another bit of surprise. And they might overreact. But I'm almost a full count ahead, a full swing ahead of them. I can come back before they swing their sword. So if I do everything right and my opponent actually gets taken by any of this, I can actually swing my third blow before they swing their first. And then you add what I refer to as commitment swings last time, and this makes things even worse for your opponent. So a commitment swing, let's say I've come into the single hip like this. Now my opponent expects to hit. What if it doesn't? So they've already seen I can do this really, really fast. So what are they going to do on their side? They see that thing coming over and everything goes over here to block it. So they're now facing this way. Okay, great. So I come over here like this, their defense goes all the way to that side and this comes through down here. Defense is still over there. I can pick my target. So that little surprise that started with the slide step just keeps going and going. And if you introduce the commitment swing, which is essentially a swing designed to miss or skip off the front or go over the top. So your opponent has to react to surprise, 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 surprise like that. And it gets, the responses get further and further and further behind you. That's a pretty good way to go. Vesper, any questions at this point?
Not at this point, no. The floor is yours.
Okay. So there is another, there's a tactical aspect to this whole thing. The commitment swings are one of the real tactical things, you know, making somebody react where they don't have to react. Just for instance, talking last week with the snap, you could bring a snap in, a snap into hit. You could bring it in so it skips off the shield into a Molinet, or you can get so it misses completely and goes into something else. And your opponent doesn't know which one it's going to be until it hits or doesn't. So by the time you know that I am actually coming down into something down here, you don't get to make any decisions until it didn't hit you right there. So you're expecting that hit, you didn't get it. Where the hell's the sword? And you're behind in trying to block it. The other really interesting one, it's going to seem like a really simple little thing, but it is not. This basically changes a whole lot in tactical fighting. So let's say this is my opponent, and there are two circles around my opponent. If I'm standing with my foot on the inner circle, I can hit my opponent and my opponent can hit me. If I'm a foot out from that, I can hit my opponent's shield, they can hit mine. And of course you have to adjust for relative sizes. So what you can do is you can do your slide step not in close enough to hit somebody, but close enough to hit their shield. They still have to react to it because they don't know if you're going to step a little further in. Usually I slide step in from about here and I step in about like this. That's about, 14 inches. Okay, I can come back here and I can step in 2 feet. They don't know what I'm going to do. So what you do is you come into where your foot is on that outer circle. So right here, your opponent has to react to that. And so you have a choice. You can keep stepping on that outer circle. And right when I want to hit, I step in. So you can launch an attack that has 6 or 7 blows. And the only time you're in range is the last blow that actually hits your opponent. The parallel circles and the commitment swings, which you use, I just introduced, which you use to make them go towards a blocking point, it doesn't need to happen. That's really, really powerful. Especially if you're a smaller fighter, so you don't have to get in range to hit them on your first blow. But you can use a strike to draw your opponent's attention while you're going into their range, instead of just walking in and hoping they don't hit you. Personally, I wouldn't even play that. It's just way too bad a bargain. There are people who have a lot faster hands than I do. I can make a sword move really fast, but not so much my hands. So I'm not going to go in and play that, getting in range, getting 1 inch out of range and doing things. Nope. After a while, you get sort of bored when it works all the time. So I start trying to get, how close can I get? So with just a slight, not a lean, but moving my lower body forward. Let me talk about that. So here's the difference. If I'm leaning forward, I'm actually bending at the waist and I'm overbalancing forward. If I let my lower body go in, I don't. I'm still balanced. I have a sword, a foot I can push back on. I can have another one I can step sideways. And I used to like to play that. I'd play it to about right here, where if the opponent swung at me, the sword would be right about here. And we'd play that. But I never really was all that much of a danger because I really wasn't there. I was actually about 6 inches back. All I had to do was push with my front foot and I was out of range because I was balanced. This upright stance that you see me doing, so you've seen a lot of people who they want to do an offside strike, deep offside. So you see them leaning way over here like this and then swinging at that. So given what I've said before, what is this lean? It's a tell. I mean, if you're leaning over here and then you swing, how the hell could it not be a tell? I don't do that. I've shown you those little steps that I can take, and I can step, a couple feet to a side, and the single hip can be coming over and hitting like that. But here's another little secret, not secret, phenomenon. The sword doesn't particularly care where it's pointing as you're coming around that circle. You can actually leave your sword in this orientation with your hand and go around the circle, and it will hit like this instead of like this. So if you're trying to get to that leg and it's coming around its inside, it'll just swing around to get the leg. But you can get the head too. The other thing you can do, and this is pretty advanced technique, I guess. If I want to really get over there and I want the sword to reach way the hell back there, I will actually reverse my shoulders right about here. And it's really nasty because you can reach way back to the back leg without any real problem at all. It goes right into it with a single hip. So watching that from the side, come around here and come in here like this. We put it over here and I'll show you where I am in relation to my opponent when I do that kind of thing. So just in moving over, well, let's look at it this way. I've leaned sideways and I swung at my opponent. See where I'm at, right there. Okay, I've done that single hip with that sideways movement. I'm actually deeper. If I do it and reverse my shoulders, I'm hitting around back now. Actually, it's another one of my one of the variations on the teardrop. I can do one of these things from way the hell out of range and just swing like this. But I'm doing that reverse shoulder thing. So it looks like it's going to hit all the way back to you, but I'm not. I can do the step forward like this, and it looks for all the world like I'm going to hit way back there, but I'm a foot out of range. And if they even think about moving that way, because what I'm doing is this. So between the single hips and that reverse shoulder thing, pretty damn powerful. Now I warn you that shoulder rotation is a little tough. So I do a lot of other things before I start trying to pick up on that. One of the other nice things, I wish I had an appliance like Duke Anton, and has for holding a shield in front and a foot out from the lapel. Because using that reverse hip thing and having the blade stay in that orientation, I can actually hit behind shields. The timing has to be just perfect, but you can do that. Okay, so gone through the single hip, the slide step, a lot of various things you can do with either one of those. And now I'm going to go into the single hip variations. Now there used to be 6 until about 2 weeks ago, and now there's 7. So I just can't teach you how to do all of them in that time. So I'll just run through them like this. If you see one you really want me to go over again, then send a question into Vesper, and I will give you a lot more coverage on that one or 2. So the first one I call a descending strike. So you're coming around here with a single hip, and right when he gets to here, you actually push straight down like this. Not out here, straight down. The thing that makes that work is there are 2 vectors. Vectors is force moving in a direction. It can be a straight vector, up, down, sideways, or it can be a rotational vector. So this has rotational energy flowing around. So when I come to here, I've got a rotational vector operating, and I add a vertical vector going down. They don't talk to one another particularly. So this one will keep going forward and out while this one pulls it down. And what you end up with is a strike that, instead of going in a diagonal path down here, this is where shields live, it comes over like this and it comes through almost horizontal right above the knee. Really nice little thing. And you can also make it into the next variation, which I call a pulled through strike. So I've come around here. Now this is like remember I said all my fakes are full speed, full force. And you can consider them a fake by they have to pass through the same point. So the single hip has to pass through this point. So does the ascending strike, and so does the pull through. So the pull through, you go down like you're going into the descending strike, then you let your sword flail. And this is really awful fast. One of the things about that one, if you just want to even try it, I'll I'll give you the safety warning first. So you've come over like this. Don't try to pull your hand in here. You will take your wrist off. You have to come through here and you have to go way out here. And right when the sword goes past there, you have to turn your body this way to catch it. It's too fast otherwise. You'll end up snapping the sword and it really takes your wrist out or your shoulder. Okay, strike from a low forehand. This is useful against my style. So if you're to fight somebody who's fighting this open form sword and shield, this is what you use. So this starts out, you struck a low blow down here. Then what you do is you yank it straight up and you can change the angle of your blade to make it come in different places. But it's just, I want to go a little higher, then I'll pull around. But it literally is just you pull up and then sort of will turn around your hand. Except for that pull through thing, that's about the next fastest thing I do. That's what I call that one, strike from a low forehand. So low forehand blow going into this technique. Strike to thrust from a single hip is really pretty interesting. I'm going to do it vertically so you can see what's happening. So I pull the single hip back, it starts coming over like this, starting to go out, and right there I pull it back. So here like this, starts coming forward, and I pull right back there. There's thrust. And you can do a full pull back like this, or you can stop it right here, do a little short. Changes the timing pretty drastically. But the other thing you can do with it is the next variation. You come all the way around here and go into that thrust, and then you aim across the face of the target. Can't see it too well, but instead of aiming right to here, I'm aiming right to here. And this is the entry to a circle that is long. So you come over here like this, pull back. And then this is one that we actually just came up a few weeks ago. Most of the Molyneux I teach actually come from forehand. This one comes from a single hip. So you can have a single hip where you just miss and come around and play it again. That one. Okay, that gives you an incredible array of things you can use. You can maybe pick up, oh, Paul uses single hips all the time. So if when the sword goes back, like this, you know it's a single hip. It's going to hit on that side. Strangely enough, I actually have another technique that goes with the teardrop, which is a forehand return. So right here, where the sword is pointing directly back from me, I can decide which side it's going to go on. All I have to do is change the position of my elbow. So if I want it to go to a single hip, let the elbow come out. If I want it to be a teardrop, I let the elbow come in. But the sword doesn't change until right about here. So it's about a third of the way into the swing before you can notice any difference. And it's a pretty significant difference. One's on this side and one's on that side. Okay, so anybody watching want to see one of those taken apart into a real step-by-step motion? You know, send a note in real quick. Otherwise, I'll just pick one.
Could you, while we are waiting for people to send in their request, could you answer a question?
Sure.
How is the offside or the single hip effective with lefties?
With what?
With lefties, left-handed fighters.
Oh, works fine.
All right, that's an easy answer.
Basically, the signal if you're fighting a left-hander. I have this one combination that I teach my students. So left-hander, their shield's on this side, so you're coming into that side. But you, for instance, throw a blow here, which brings their defense over to their sword side, and this awful got in quick. And so they have to turn for it, and then you step in, and right under that shield, there's a round. Or you can do it over the top too, either one. So remember, it's a left-hander, so their shield's on this side, sword's on this side. When I do the slide step in, I'm going to step basically just past their shoulder on that side, aiming to go just past it. I don't. But my sword always goes towards, my swing always goes towards their sword. So if it's a right-hander, I'll go right across to come over to this side. But if it's a left-hander, I'll come right into them here. So it's right in here, so all the defense is there. And then I take that other little quick step right there, and then I got a perfect angle right across the front of their shield, and I aim right down to the corner over there. Yeah, down here, that's kill.
We do have a request for some deconstruction.
Right.
All right, so it looks like the second from the last shot that you showed.
The thrust into the mole.
I'm gonna go with yes, and if not, hopefully this person will correct me.
Yeah, there's a short there. Yeah, that's it. The short thrust actually I taught in up above this one. So into the mole and egg. Okay, so if I'm coming at this person, I'm lined up for a thrust, and telling the difference between that and a line that changes by 3 inches there, you simply can't tell. So anywhere up to about here, you can't tell which one I'm doing. Essentially, you know I'm not going to hit you with this part of it when I miss you with it. And then if you imagine a big circle, just follow the tip of my sword. It's going to come around here like this, like that. So what you try to do is when you miss, you try to insert your tip into that circle. So the sword is going to be moving in that vector. So it's going to be coming around. So you got almost all the power you need, and you're just feeding it into that thing, which actually gets it faster. And the fun little thing about it is your hand doesn't come back. You see a lot of people do the Molinex and the hand comes way back here and around. You don't have to. You just, it's got all the power it needs right there. So when it starts coming back, you just push right along your forearm and it just comes around. That's, let me do a little more in the front part of that though. So you started out here, so but if you do it the way I would, you would be out of range here, just hitting the shield to draw their defenses over there. Then you come around here like this, and you probably slide step in just a little bit because you don't want to be in range. But look where the tip is before it changes, and right there it changes. Basically, if you're running the sword in a circle and you pull back toward the center, it lines up with a thrust. Pretty much anywhere you want to do it. Down here, up here. Now let me say a little thing about the thrust. Most people thrust this way, where their palm is in towards the inside. I teach that the palm must be down or out, depending where the sword is. Because if it's down right here, I have my whole body powering that thrust. If I'm doing it high and it's outside, I have my whole body powering that thrust, rather than coming up here with it inside and poking like that. If you just try it, the difference in the power and speed is just phenomenal. Just making that one little change. Okay, so the hard part about getting this thing is most people come around here, and as soon as it gets here, they try to turn it into a thrust. Now you notice the sword sort of turns on its axis right here. That means you pull too soon. Or comes like this and the sword goes down like that. That means you pull too late. So you have to time it so you think of a little teardrop. Here like this, the round part here, it goes down to a point. So what you're doing, the blade's coming down this thing here, and right about here, you pull it down this way. But it has to be out about here. It actually has to be, your arm has to be about halfway extended before you pull back, and then you can actually step in. No way you go. Might as well cover in that little short thrust while I'm at it. So once you've come around that corner, the sword's not moving. You're basically taking the energy away from the sword. Because the energy is going on that vector. If you pull in towards the center, all that goes away. So your sword can easily stop right here. Well, it can easily stop right here too. Okay. Any other requests?
It does not look like there are any other requests at the moment, but people are also welcome to send them in at a later date, and I'm sure you'd love to reach out to them.
Sure. Let me say one more thing about that pull through thing that comes
Sure.
around. Literally, that's the fastest thing I've ever come up with. And I realize it's not a snap, but I don't really care. So it's coming around here. Now, as it comes around here, and the radius gets smaller, you've got a radius reduction, so the power and speed increase right here. And I pull it through and I pull it into a teardrop. So the sword's going to come around here. And that is another power speed increaser. So by the time it gets out to here, it's gone through 1, 2, bang. The first time I did it, I was standing next to my pel. I was wondering how close I could get to the pel and still get the sword through there. And right about there. And then I came around and hit like here, right back in my face. It's really fast. So just for kicks. Okay, so if no other questions, I guess that's about it.
No other questions as it stands. Thank you so much for everything tonight.
Next week, I'm going to do the next week, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to do the forehand attacks, which is the teardrop and the offside teardrop.
Very cool.
Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always.
Likewise.
And we're looking forward to having you back in 2 weeks. We'll post an event with the information for everybody so they can keep track of all your amazing demonstrations.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.